She was chasing a runaway sweet ball down a New York sidewalk when she crashed into a millionaire. And fate said, showtime. It was a typical Tuesday in Jackson Heights, Queens, where the subway rattled overhead and the streets smelled like fried pakoras, roasted peanuts, and big dreams packed in Tupperware. Maya Thomas, a single mom with too much grit and not enough sleep, was running her usual sweet stall outside an Indian grocery store. Her folding table wobbled slightly. Her handwritten sign read, Maya's Mythi, homemade, honest, magical. And just as magical things tend to do, one of her sweets decided to run away. No, come back, you butterball menace, she shouted, chasing the round, golden ladoo that had rolled off the tray and taken off down the sloped sidewalk like it was auditioning for Fast and Furious. Diwali Drift. Enter Ethan Walker, 32, billionaire tech genius, magazine cover regular, and unofficially voted most likely to ignore you at a party. He was on his way to a rare meeting in Queens, guided there only because his assistant swore it had the best masala chai on the East Coast. He stepped out of his black Tesla right as something small, squishy, and suspiciously fragrant smacked into his polished shoe. Then came Maya. She skidded to a stop, winded and horrified. Oh no! Ethan looked down, then up. Did you just throw a meatball at me? Maya gasped. Excuse me? That was a lad. She stopped herself, realizing he probably had no idea what that meant. A sweet, homemade, organic, gluten-free even. From behind her table, a small boy with messy hair and big eyes called out, It's okay, Mom. I told you we needed a lid. Ethan wiped his shoe with a napkin Maya handed over, still blinking at the oily golden ball now resting in her palm like a fallen soldier. Is it always this dramatic at your stand? Only on Tuesdays, she deadpanned. You ruined a perfectly good sweet, but don't worry. I'll just work 4 extra hours to make up for it. He raised an eyebrow. You're serious? Deadly. I make every batch by hand, sell them here to pay rent, daycare, and occasionally buy cookies that aren't expired. There was something so painfully honest and weirdly funny in the way she said it that Ethan chuckled. He hadn't laughed in a long time. Not really. What's it called? He asked, pointing to the tray. She hesitated. The sweet ladoo. Want one? He bit into it, then blinked. That tastes like sunshine, and nostalgia had a baby. Maya cracked a smile. Careful, you'll sound poetic. I'll take them all, he said, pulling out his wallet. All? Every single one. Her son gasped. That's like rich people level kindness. Ethan grinned. Maybe I'm just a rich guy who likes good sweets. What he didn't say was that something about Maya, her honesty, her hustle, or maybe just her total disregard for his billionaire aura, had left a mark deeper than the ladoo on his shoe. And what none of them knew was that this one absurd sugar-coated moment had just flipped the script on all their lives. It started with sweets, but somewhere between late-night texts and chai deliveries, something else began to simmer. Ethan didn't mean to go back the next day. Actually, he told himself he absolutely wouldn't. He had board meetings, investors waiting, apps to launch, billionaire stuff. But somehow, around 3 p.m., his Tesla parked itself in the same spot near Patel Grocers, and his hand had a coffee in it he swore was for someone else. Maya wasn't surprised when he showed up. Okay, maybe a little. Lost again, Richie Rich, she teased, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, trying not to look like she cared. Just in the area, Ethan lied, casually setting the coffee on her table. Thought you could use a caffeine upgrade. She raised an eyebrow. You trying to bribe me for more ladoos? No, he said. I was actually hoping for jalebi today. Maya smirked. Jalebi's a Sunday thing. You'll have to earn it. And so it began. Day after day, Ethan started showing up. Sometimes with coffee, sometimes with questions. How long had she been doing this? How did she learn to cook? Was her son always that sarcastic? They started talking more, laughing more. Sometimes Maya would sneak him a piece of barfi in a napkin when no one was looking. Other times, Ethan would pretend to accidentally buy too many supplies from the Indian store and leave them by her cart. Sugar, ghee, flour. just lying around. It wasn't charity. It never felt like that. It felt like something else, like curiosity growing roots, like friendship in disguise. One rainy afternoon, when foot traffic was low and her umbrella had flipped inside out for the third time, Ethan stood there beside her under his massive golf umbrella. "You know you don't have to be here," she said, shivering, wrapping her shawl tighter. He shrugged. "You're here." Maya looked at him sideways. "You're not used to this life, are you?" "Definitely not," he admitted. "My chef panics if my almond milk is expired." She laughed in loudly. "You're the softest rich guy I've ever met." "I could be hard," he offered. "You couldn't be hard if you were soaked in cement," she shot back, and that made him laugh. Even little Aiden, her 7-year-old with the world's sharpest wit, started warming up. He began saving Ethan a ladoo every day, labeled, "For the tall guy with weird shoes." Ethan had dated models, influencers, startup queens. None of them made him feel like this. Like he was seen without being studied. Like he was enough, even without his money. Maya didn't say it out loud, but she started saving him the first piece of every batch. She never did that for anyone. Something was brewing, stronger than chai, sweeter than syrup, and neither of them knew what to call it yet. She thought she had too much past to offer, but he was already carrying a silence of his own. By now, Ethan was part of the view in Jackson Heights. People started asking if he was Maya's cousin or some chai-obsessed customer. Aiden had already promoted him from tall guy with weird shoes to kind of cool for an adult. But with every sweet shared and joke exchanged, Maya started to feel something itch beneath her calm. Fear. The kind of fear that creeps in when something starts to matter too much. It hit her one evening as they packed up after a long day. Ethan insisted on helping, again, and she finally sighed. "You know, I can't keep pretending you're just here for the ladoos." Ethan didn't flinch. "I'm not pretending." "Then what are we doing, Ethan?" she asked, tying up a bag with a little more force than necessary. "Because I don't live in your world. You show up here like some Hallmark movie subplot. But this, me, is messy." He leaned against the table. "Maybe I like messy." She paused, then laughed bitterly. "You say that now, but you haven't seen my reality." There was silence, and then Maya took a breath, the kind that tastes like truth before it's spoken. "I got pregnant at 20, dropped out of college. My ex left when Aiden was 6 months old. No child support, no parents to run to. Just me, sugar, and a stovetop in a tiny studio apartment." Ethan didn't say anything. His face didn't twist with pity, which surprised her. "People see me and assume weakness," she continued, voice low now. "But I built this little life from flour and fire. I don't have time to dream." He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "Can I tell you something no one knows?" She didn't answer, but her eyes said, "Go ahead." "My parents died in a car crash when I was 12. I was raised by my uncle, a hedge fund guy, coldest man I've ever known. I built my company because it was the only way I knew to outrun being powerless." Maya stared at him. "You don't seem powerless now. Maybe not, but I still wake up some nights wondering if all this," he gestured vaguely at himself, "means anything to anyone." She blinked. For the first time, she saw past the suits, the sharp jawline, the casual confidence. She saw the boy who'd lost too much, too early. They stood there in silence, beneath the neon buzz of the Patel grocery sign. Finally, Ethan spoke again. "I'm not here to save you, Maya. I'm here because you don't need saving." And just like that, the wall she'd spent years building, out of fear, pain, and stubborn pride, developed its first honest crack. He offered her the world, but she didn't want a rescue. She wanted to stand tall beside him, not behind him. Maya didn't mean to snap, but when Ethan casually suggested over coffee and jalebi on a cold Saturday morning, "You know, you could open a real store. I could invest, help scale you up." Something in her froze. Her smile faded like sugar melting in rain. "Oh," she said. "Quiet. Too quiet." Ethan didn't notice right away. "I mean, we'd get a great location. I have a guy in Soho." That's not what this is, Maya cut in, sharper now. I'm not some project you can scale up like an app. He blinked. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? She asked, eyes glinting with the ache she worked so hard to bury. I know your world, Ethan. Business plans, IPOs, buyouts. You probably don't even realize you're trying to fix me. I'm not trying to fix you, he said, frustrated now. I'm trying to support you. Isn't that what people do when they care? People like you don't stay, she said. The words slipped out before she could stop them. You show up, feel things, play generous, and then one day you disappear because it's all too real. Ethan stared at her, hurt. That's not fair. Neither was being left to raise a child alone, she said, voice cracking. And I can't do that again. Not even halfway. For a moment, everything stilled. Aiden was in the back, sketching superheroes. Customers passed by, oblivious to the quiet storm building behind the sweet stand. Ethan stepped back. So what do you want me to do, Maya? Just stop caring? I want you to understand that I didn't ask for help. I was doing okay before you walked in, and I'll be okay if you walk out. He looked at her like she'd just slapped him. Wow, you really don't think I'm different. She didn't answer. And that silence, more than any shout, more than any insult, carved something deep. Later that night, Ethan didn't text. Maya didn't check her phone. Aiden asked if Tall Guy was coming by tomorrow. Maya just said, I don't think so, sweetheart. The streets felt colder. The sweets didn't sell as fast. The music from her speaker sounded too loud, like it was trying to cover up something breaking. Two people who had found a spark in the unlikeliest of places now stood in their own corners, wondering if the fire had gone out or if they were just too afraid to burn. When everything went quiet, they each asked the same question in different rooms. Did I just lose something real or save myself from getting hurt again? The silence between them lasted 3 days, not just the kind that lives in inboxes and ignored messages, the kind that echoes inside your chest, reminding you something once warm is now missing. Maya stood at her cart, selling sweets with a forced smile. Her regulars noticed the difference. She didn't joke as much. She forgot someone's usual order. Even Aiden asked, Mom, did Ethan go back to Rich People Planet? She laughed a little, then excused herself behind the cart to cry for 5 minutes and pretend it was allergies. Meanwhile, uptown in his high-rise condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and a fridge that sang when opened, Ethan stared out at Manhattan and felt nothing. He'd been offered a Forbes cover that morning. A deal worth $70 million was sitting in his inbox. But all he could think about was a folding table in Queens and the woman who looked at him like he was a man, not a millionaire. He played their fight over and over in his head. People like you don't stay. She didn't say it out of cruelty. She said it because she believed it. And the worst part? He wasn't sure if she was wrong. He'd never stayed anywhere long. Relationships, homes, cities. Everything had an expiration date. He called it freedom. But now it just felt like floating and lonely. He thought of Aiden's crooked little smile, of Maya's hands dusted in powdered sugar, of how she rolled her eyes when he got philosophical over chai. Ethan closed his laptop, shut off his phone, and just sat. Meanwhile, Maya was doing something she hadn't done in years, doubting herself. Had she pushed him away too fast? Was she so afraid of being hurt again that she couldn't tell when someone was trying to actually care? She sat at her tiny kitchen table after Aiden went to bed, picking at leftover jalebi and staring at a napkin with Ethan's handwriting on it, from the day he tried her sweets for the first time. Tastes like sunshine and nostalgia had a baby. Who says stuff like that? She smiled, then frowned, then whispered, why did you have to show up? But deep down she knew. It wasn't just about him showing up. It was about whether she had the strength to let someone stay. And Ethan? He was wondering the same thing. Because when you've spent your whole life outrunning pain, standing still for love feels terrifying. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a paper bag left on a cart. But sometimes hope doesn't knock. It just quietly returns. It started with a note. Maya arrived at her cart just after sunrise. It had rained the night before, and the pavement still smelled like wet cement and early city dust. She was setting up like she always did, containers lined, burner on, shawl around her shoulders, when she saw it, a small paper bag sitting in the center of the cart. No name, no signature, just a folded note taped to the side. She looked around, street empty. She hesitated, then peeled it open. Inside, one perfectly wrapped box of gourmet chai masala from an obscure boutique she'd once mentioned in passing. The note read, in blocky, too careful handwriting, "I remember." E. Her hands trembled, just slightly. It wasn't flowers, or diamonds, or some sweeping romantic monologue. It was her words remembered. It was listening, in a world full of noise. And suddenly she felt her breath catch. That small bag felt heavier than any gift she'd ever received. Not because of the price tag, but because of the thought. Later that afternoon, just as she was closing up, a familiar voice spoke gently from behind her. "You didn't block me." Maya turned. There he was, Ethan, looking not polished but real. Hoodie, slightly unshaven, a glimmer of hope in his usually sharp eyes. "I figured if you blocked me, I'd deserve it," he added, scratching the back of his neck. She studied him, arms crossed, heartbeat a traitor beneath her sweater. "I thought you'd disappear," she said flatly. "I did," he admitted, "just long enough to realize it was the dumbest idea I've ever had." She looked down. "I don't do second chances lightly. I don't do vulnerability at all," he said with a crooked smile. "But here I am, a beat." "I'm not trying to rescue you, Maya," he said softer now, "but I'd like to walk beside you, even if it's just to carry the extra flour." She blinked hard, then surprised herself by laughing. "You don't even know how heavy flour is." "I Googled it," he said proudly. "One bag is approximately a decent bicep workout." Maya rolled her eyes, but the smile crept in before she could stop it. "You're still a little ridiculous," she murmured. "I like to think of it as charmingly persistent," he said. There was a long pause, the kind where neither of them needed to fill the air. Then gently, Maya stepped aside and gestured to the cart. "I have an extra stool," she said, "if you're staying." Ethan didn't say anything. He just sat. No titles, no terms. Just sat. And in the quiet clatter of a city that never stops moving, they both found something unexpectedly still. Not perfect, not fixed, but hopeful. Sometimes the biggest vows aren't shouted from rooftops. They're whispered in the soft glow of streetlights and understood in the spaces between words. The evening wrapped Jackson Heights in a golden haze, the sun slipping behind the tall buildings like it was hiding from the day's heat. Maya locked up her cart, tired but content. Aiden was at his after-school program, and for once the city felt like it belonged to her. Ethan was waiting nearby, leaning against a lamppost, hands deep in his pockets, eyes scanning the sidewalk like he was searching for courage. She approached him, careful, heart pounding louder than the distant honking taxis. "I've been thinking," Ethan said quietly, "about us, about what this means." Maya's breath hitched, but she said nothing. "I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers," he continued. "I don't have a blueprint for how to be with someone like you, but I want to try." She looked up at him, the man who had wandered into her life like a storm, scattering everything, then stayed like a calm after. "I don't want to be your project," Maya said firmly. "I want to be your partner." Ethan nodded. "And I want to be someone you can trust, someone who shows up, not just with money or ideas, but with me." There was a pause, then Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, simple ring. "Not a proposal," he said quickly, noticing her eyes widen. "Not yet, but a promise that I'll keep trying, that I won't give up, even when it gets hard." Maya felt the weight of the moment settle over them like the first chill of fall. Her hand brushed his, fingers trembling. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, voice low, "but I'm willing to find out, if you're really here." He squeezed her hand gently. "Every day." They stood there, two imperfect people in a city that demanded strength, surrounded by the noise and rush and endless stories. There's now just one thread woven into the tapestry. No grand speeches, no fireworks. Just a quiet promise made under the glow of streetlights. That sometimes love is enough. Sometimes joy doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It slips in on a rainy Tuesday, disguised as laughter and the smell of fresh sweets. The morning sky was stubbornly gray, threatening rain but holding back just enough to keep the streets busy. Maya was at her cart, wrapped in her favorite faded jacket, arranging ladoos with practiced hands. The scent of cardamom and saffron drifted through the chilly air, mixing with the rumble of the city waking up. Aiden was at school, humming something from his favorite cartoon as he waved goodbye. And for the first time in weeks, Maya felt lighter, as if a small weight had lifted from her chest. Suddenly, Ethan appeared, carrying a stack of boxes. Delivery for the sweetest entrepreneur in Queens? He grinned, balancing the packages like a pro. What now? Maya teased, eyeing the bulky boxes suspiciously. Ethan winked. I may have ordered some new supplies and a few treats for us. Inside were exotic ingredients she'd never dared to try. Rosewater, pistachio paste, saffron threads so fine they looked like gold dust. Maya raised an eyebrow. You really went all out. Only the best for my favorite sweet maker. Before she could respond, a sudden drizzle began, light but persistent. Rain check? Ethan offered his umbrella, which was ridiculously oversized and somehow charmingly awkward in his hands. Maya hesitated, then nodded. They packed up the cart together, laughing when Ethan accidentally knocked over a container of powdered sugar, covering them both in white dust. Aiden showed up earlier than expected, running toward them with his backpack slipping off one shoulder. Mom, Ethan, check this out, he said, holding up a crumpled drawing of a superhero made entirely of sweets. You made this? Maya asked, ruffling his hair. Yep, sweet man. Protector of the candy cart. Ethan chuckled. Looks like I have a sidekick. The rain picked up, heavier now, and they all huddled under the giant umbrella, sharing the boxes of treats. Maya broke a piece of pistachio barfi and offered it to Ethan, who smiled with genuine delight. This is amazing, he said, eyes lighting up. Only the best from Queens, Maya said proudly. Aiden jumped up, spinning around, water droplets flying like confetti. Let's race, he shouted, taking off down the sidewalk. Ethan and Maya exchanged a glance, their laughter mixing with the sounds of the city, honking cars, distant music, the patter of rain on pavement. For a moment, nothing else mattered. No past hurts, no looming fears, just the unexpected joy of a rainy day, a shared umbrella, and a little boy who believed in superheroes. Love's easy when the sun shines, but what happens when the clouds roll in and the storms refuse to pass? The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. At first, everything felt like a dream. Stolen moments over chai, small celebrations of success at the cart, Ethan showing up with unexpected kindness, and Maya's laughter filling the corners of their little world. But the city didn't pause for their happiness. Bills piled up. The cost of supplies crept higher. Aiden's school demanded more attention, and Maya's exhaustion deepened, her body and spirit stretched thin. Ethan's world, too, tugged at him. Board meetings, business deals, the constant pressure to perform and deliver. Their schedules grew hectic, and the easy conversations were replaced by hurried texts, missed calls, and moments when one would expect the other to show up, and they didn't. One evening after a particularly long day, Maya closed the cart with trembling hands. The sugar-coated treats that once brought smiles now felt like chains. Ethan was late again. No calls, no messages. When he finally arrived, apologetic and worn, the conversation between them cracked. I'm trying, Ethan said, voice tight, but sometimes it feels like I'm failing at both worlds. Maya looked away, biting her lip, and I'm trying not to feel like I'm failing my son and myself. Their eyes met, raw, tired, uncertain. I don't want to lose this, Ethan whispered. Us. Neither do I, Maya admitted, but love isn't enough if we can't be real with each other. They spent the night talking, really talking, about fears, doubts, and the sacrifices they'd have to make. It wasn't easy. There were tears, there were harsh words, but there was also honesty, because love, they realized, wasn't just about joy. It was about choosing each other every day, even when it hurt. And in a city that never stopped moving, that was perhaps the greatest test of all. Sometimes the hardest part isn't saying goodbye, it's daring to say hello to what comes next. The first morning after their long talk, the city felt different. The usual rush of Jackson Heights buzzed around them. Vendors setting up stalls, children laughing on the sidewalks, the scent of fresh bread mingling with exhaust fumes. But for Maya and Ethan, time seemed to slow. Maya stood at her cart, the familiar clink of coins sounding like a heartbeat. Ethan arrived not with grand gestures, but a quiet presence. No promises, no pressure. Just two people willing to try again, stripped of expectations. Coffee? Ethan asked, holding out a small paper cup, steam curling in the crisp air. Maya smiled, accepting it. They sat on a nearby bench, watching the world wake up. I'm going to apply for a small business grant, Maya said. I want to expand the cart. Maybe hire someone to help with Aiden. That's amazing, Ethan said, and I'll help however I can. No strings. She looked at him, gratitude softening her features. Maybe we can figure this out. Together, she said. Ethan nodded, his eyes shining with quiet determination. They didn't have all the answers. They didn't even know if this new path would be easy. But they had something rarer than certainty, hope, and sometimes that's enough to turn the page and start a new chapter. Sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go, even if it breaks your heart. The chill of early winter crept into Jackson Heights, painting the city in muted grays and whites. Maya's business grant had been approved, a victory that felt like a dream finally coming true. But with opportunity came hard decisions. Ethan received an offer he couldn't ignore, a chance to lead a new project across the country, one that would cement his place in the business world, but meant leaving New York. The news hit Maya like a punch to the gut. She wanted to tell him to stay, to fight for what they were building. But something deeper whispered she had to be brave in a different way. The night before Ethan's planned departure, they met at the old bench near her cart, the city lights flickering like distant stars. I don't want to lose you, Ethan confessed, voice heavy with conflict. Maya's eyes glistened with tears she refused to shed. I don't want to lose us either. But I want you to chase your dreams, Ethan. He shook his head. I want us both to be happy, but I can't do both. A silence stretched between them, filled with all the things left unsaid. Finally, Maya spoke, steady but aching. Then maybe this is love's hardest test. Letting go and holding on would hurt more. Ethan reached for her hand, their fingers entwined like fragile lifelines. I'll always carry you with me, he said, and I'll keep this place alive. For Aiden, for me, for what we shared. They parted the next day. No promises of forever. Just a profound gratitude for a love that asked for sacrifice. And in that letting go, they found a bittersweet kind of peace. In a city of endless noise, sometimes love speaks loudest in the quiet moments shared between two hearts beating as one. The spring air in New York carried a softness that felt like a promise. Jackson Heights was waking up with its usual hustle, but for Maya, everything shimmered with a new kind of light. Her sweet cart had grown. Brighter colors, new treats, a small sign that read, Maya's Sweets and Smiles. Aiden helped with the customers, his laughter ringing like music, and in the middle of it all stood Maya, radiant, steady, her heart full. Ethan was back in town, not for business, not for grand declarations, but for the simple pleasure of being near the people and places that had changed him. They met on a quiet bench under the cherry blossoms, petals drifting like confetti around them. He reached out, brushing a stray hair from her face. Every journey I took, every decision I made, led me back to this, he whispered. Maya smiled, her eyes shining with tears and joy. No matter where life takes us, she said softly, this will always be home. Ethan took her hand, their fingers fitting perfectly, like the final note in a song long written. I don't know what the future holds, he said, but I want to face it with you. She leaned in, the world falling away until there was only the warmth of his lips and the steady rhythm of a promise made and kept. In the heart of the city that never sleeps, two souls found their peace, not in fortune or fame, but in the harmony of love, imperfect, unshakable, and beautifully theirs.